It was a quiet Friday afternoon when Emily Carter received the message that would subtly unravel the life she thought she knew. Her husband Ryan had texted her from the airport. "Hey, my flight got delayed, but Mark Thompson might drop by later. He's in town for a few days. Be nice to him. He's been through a lot." Emily paused as she read the name. Mark Thompson. The name stirred a faint memory, one of Ryan's old college friends she had met once years ago at their wedding. Back then, he'd seemed polite but distant, the kind of man who watched others closely but rarely spoke much about himself. She shrugged off the unease and went back to her chores. By evening, the rain had started to fall softly against the kitchen windows, the rhythmic tapping of droplets filling the silence. The house felt unusually large and empty without Ryan. Emily was just settling down with a cup of tea when the doorbell rang. She opened the door to find Mark standing there, slightly drenched but smiling faintly. He looked older than she remembered, sharper lines around his eyes, a certain heaviness in his expression. "Hi, Emily. Sorry to drop in like this," he said, his voice low and calm. "Ryan told me I could stop by. I have something of his from years ago." Emily forced a polite smile. "Of course. Come in before you get soaked." He stepped inside, glancing around the living room with quiet interest, as though taking in every detail. His eyes lingered on the family photos on the wall, Emily and Ryan hiking in Montana, their anniversary dinner. Smiling faces that now seemed almost staged under his gaze. She offered him a cup of coffee, and he accepted. As she prepared it, she couldn't help but notice how silent the house had become. The sound of the rain outside and the occasional creak of the old floorboards seemed unnaturally loud. When she brought the coffee back, Mark was standing near the window, hands in his pockets, watching the downpour. "Beautiful place," he said softly. "Peaceful." "Thank you," Emily replied, sitting across from him. "So, you and Ryan go way back, right?" Mark smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We do. College days. We were close back then. Spent a lot of time together." "He ever talk about those years?" "Sometimes," Emily said cautiously. "Mostly just funny stories, pranks, road trips, that kind of thing." Mark let out a quiet chuckle, though there was no humor in it. "Yeah, funny stories. That's one way to put it." Emily frowned slightly. There was something in his tone, something heavy, almost bitter. She shifted in her seat. "Did something happen back then?" she asked lightly, trying not to sound too curious. Mark looked at her for a long moment before answering. His expression was unreadable, his eyes dark and focused. "A lot happened. Some of it he probably didn't tell you." Her heart gave a faint, nervous thump. "Like what?" Instead of answering directly, Mark took a slow sip of coffee, his gaze never leaving hers. "You really don't know him as well as you think, do you?" Emily forced a small laugh, trying to brush off the tension. "We've been married 8 years, Mark. I think I know my husband pretty well." He smiled faintly. "I used to think I knew him, too." The words hung between them, heavy and uninvited. The rain outside began to pour harder, and thunder rolled in the distance. Emily's unease deepened, a quiet instinct whispering that something about this visit wasn't just casual nostalgia. She stood up, intending to refill his coffee, if only to have an excuse to step away and gather her thoughts. But before she could reach for the pot, Mark's voice cut through the quiet. "You really don't know what he's been hiding from you, do you?" Emily froze. The sound of the rain filled the silence again, each drop echoing louder than before. She turned slowly, her heart pounding. Mark's expression was calm, almost compassionate, but his eyes told a different story. That was the moment Emily realized this was no ordinary visit. It was the beginning of something she wasn't ready to uncover. That night, the rain didn't stop. It poured steadily, a low whisper against the windows that seemed to fill every empty space in the house. Emily had hoped Mark would leave after a short visit, but when the storm worsened, he asked if he could stay just until the weather clears. It felt wrong to say no. Ryan would have expected her to be polite, and besides, she couldn't think of a reason that didn't sound rude. So she nodded and said, "Of course." The guest rooms made up. But as the hours passed, Emily began to regret it. The house, normally filled with the comforting hum of Ryan's presence, now felt foreign. The faint smell of wet earth drifted through the open window. Every tick of the hallway clock echoed sharply, reminding her how unnaturally quiet it was. Mark sat on the living room sofa, staring into the fireplace even though there was no fire. His expression was blank calm on the surface, yet tense underneath. Emily sat across from him, clutching her tea, feeling the weight of his silence pressing on her. He broke it suddenly. "Do you ever feel like you don't really know someone, even after years together?" Emily's eyes lifted. "What do you mean?" He smiled faintly. "Ryan, he's always been good at keeping things to himself. He hides it well behind the charm, the calm. But there's always something underneath." "I don't think that's fair," she said, her voice soft but defensive. "Ryan's private, sure, but everyone has a past." Mark leaned forward slightly. "Do you ever ask about that past?" She hesitated. She had, of course she had, but Ryan always brushed it off with easy laughter and vague answers. College parties. Long nights. Nothing serious. And she had believed him. Mark studied her face as if reading her thoughts. "He told you about Sophie?" Emily frowned. "Who's Sophie?" Mark didn't answer. Instead, he looked down, rubbing his hands together as if trying to warm them. "Forget I said that." Her stomach twisted. "No, tell me. Who was she?" He sighed, eyes still fixed on the floor. "Someone who mattered. Someone who shouldn't have been forgotten." Emily set her cup down. Her pulse quickened, and a faint tremor crept into her voice. "Mark, what are you trying to tell me?" He met her gaze again, his expression unreadable. "Nothing you're ready to hear." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed a message from Ryan. She opened it quickly. "Hey, bad news. Flight's canceled. I'll be back Sunday night. You okay?" Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She wanted to tell him everything, that Mark was here, that he was saying strange things, but something stopped her. Maybe fear. Maybe confusion. Instead, she just typed back, "I'm fine. Get some rest." When she looked up, Mark was watching her. "He's not coming back tonight, is he?" he asked. Emily's throat tightened. "No, he'll be home in 2 days." He nodded slowly, as though that confirmed something. "Then maybe it's time someone told you the truth." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. He placed it on the table between them. Emily leaned forward, and the breath caught in her chest. It was a photo of 2 young men, Ryan and Mark, standing beside a lakeside cabin. Between them was a woman, smiling brightly, her arm hooked around Ryan's waist. But the woman's face, it looked eerily familiar. "Who is she?" Emily whispered. Mark's voice was low. "That's Sophie. She died the night that picture was taken." Emily looked up sharply. "What are you saying?" He leaned closer, his voice trembling just slightly. "Ryan wasn't the man you think he is, Emily. He made mistakes, ones that don't just disappear. And I've carried them for both of us." A chill ran through her. The house felt colder, darker. The ticking clock grew louder again, like a heartbeat pulsing in her ears. Mark sat back, his eyes distant. "He made me promise never to tell," he said softly, almost to himself. "But you deserve to know who you married." Emily stared at him, the photograph trembling in her hand. The smiling faces on it no longer looked innocent. They looked like ghosts frozen in a moment before something terrible happened. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows. Inside, Emily's world began to fracture, piece by piece. She realized then that the silence of the house wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the sound of truth waiting to be heard. The clock struck midnight, and the storm had mellowed into a steady drizzle. The house was still, but Emily's mind was spinning. The photograph lay on the coffee table, the faces of Ryan, Mark, and the mysterious woman Sophie staring back at her. Mark sat silently in the armchair, his fingers steepled under his chin, as if gathering the courage to speak again. Emily's throat felt dry, but she finally broke the silence. "Tell me what happened," she said softly. "Tell me everything." Mark didn't look up. "Are you sure you want to know?" Emily hesitated. Every instinct screamed no, but the unease that had been gnawing at her since Mark's arrival wouldn't let her rest. "Yes," she whispered. He exhaled slowly and began. "It was our last year in college. Ryan and I were roommates. We'd both been seeing Sophie, but she didn't know it at first. She was," he paused, searching for the right word, "the kind of person who made everything brighter. We both fell for her, but Ryan was the one she chose. I told myself I was fine with it. I wasn't." He rubbed his forehead, his voice trembling. "One night the three of us went to a cabin by the lake. It was supposed to be a weekend getaway before graduation. There was drinking, music, laughter, and then argument. I went outside to cool off. When I came back, the lights were off and Ryan was gone. Sophie was lying at the bottom of the stairs. She wasn't breathing." Emily's heart pounded. "You're saying Ryan? I don't know." Mark cut her off sharply, his composure breaking for the first time. "I don't know what happened." He said she tripped. He swore it was an accident. But the look on his face, Mark stopped, shaking his head. He was terrified. Not because she was dead, but because he knew it would destroy him. Emily's voice was barely audible. "And you?" "I called the police," Mark said. "Or I tried to. He stopped me, said it would ruin both our lives. He begged me to keep quiet. I loved him like a brother, and I was weak. So I said I'd take the blame if it ever came out. I told him to leave town that night, and he did." The room felt suffocating. The weight of every word pressed against Emily's chest. "So you're saying my husband let you live with that guilt for years?" Mark's jaw clenched. "He promised he'd make it right, but he never did. He built a perfect life instead: career, marriage, a house with white walls and no ghosts." Emily stood up, pacing, her hands trembling. "This doesn't make sense. Why come here now? Why tell me all this after so long?" Mark looked up at her, his eyes full of something dark: pain, anger, longing. "Because he invited me. He said he wanted to make peace. But then I realized he had no intention of showing up. He wanted me here for you to hear this from me. That's who he is. He wants to control the story, even from a distance." Emily's breath caught. "You're lying." "Ryan wouldn't." Mark's tone softened. "Emily, he's not the man you think he is. You've only seen the version he built for you. But underneath, he's been hiding from that night his whole life." She sank into the couch, gripping her knees. The rain outside had stopped, leaving only the faint dripping from the eaves. The silence pressed in. Mark reached into his bag and pulled out a small USB drive, placing it on the table. "Everything's on here. The emails, the messages, even a voice recording. You'll hear it for yourself." Emily stared at the tiny object, as if it were something toxic. "Why do you still have it?" His voice cracked. "Because I couldn't let it go. Because part of me always wondered if he'd ever tell you. And now that I see he hasn't..." He trailed off, looking away. "You deserve the truth, even if it breaks you." Emily's hand shook as she picked up the drive. Her reflection glimmered faintly in the dark window behind Mark, two figures trapped in a house full of ghosts. For the first time that night, she realized that Mark wasn't just here to tell a story. He was here to release himself from a dot, and somewhere deep inside her, she felt the first pang of doubt about the man she had built her life around. Cliffhanger. As Emily turned toward the guest room, something caught her eye, a corner of an envelope sticking out from under the bed. It was addressed to her. In Ryan's handwriting, Emily's hand trembled as she pulled the envelope from under the guest room bed. Her name, Emily Carter, was written in Ryan's distinct handwriting. The paper smelled faintly of cedar and cologne, the same scent that always lingered on his jackets. For a long moment, she just stared at it, afraid to open it, afraid of what waited inside. Mark had fallen asleep on the couch downstairs, exhaustion or guilt weighing him down. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the clock. Emily sat on the edge of the bed and finally tore the envelope open. Inside was a single folded letter. Emily, if you're reading this, then Mark has told you his version of the truth. I knew he would. I also knew he wouldn't tell you everything. There are things you deserve to hear from me. Her eyes moved rapidly across the page, her pulse hammering in her ears. Yes, there was a woman named Sophie. And yes, she died that night at the lake. But what Mark didn't tell you is that she wasn't just my girlfriend, she was his obsession. He followed us everywhere. He called her, watched her, begged her not to choose me. When she ended things with him, he snapped. That night, he showed up uninvited. Sophie was frightened. I tried to calm him down, but he pushed her. She fell. He panicked. I helped him hide what happened because I thought I owed him my loyalty after all we'd been through. Emily's heart froze. Her breath came in shallow gasps as she read the next lines. I thought I could bury it forever. But Mark never forgave me, not for Sophie's death, and not for moving on. When I invited him to visit, I thought maybe we could face the past together. I didn't expect him to twist it. If he's there with you, Emily, please be careful. Her fingers loosened, and the letter fluttered onto her lap. A sudden sound, floorboards creaking. Downstairs made her look up sharply. Mark was awake. She stuffed the letter into her sweater pocket and walked slowly toward the staircase. Mark was standing at the bottom, staring up at her. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. You found it, he said quietly. Emily hesitated. Yes, Ryan wrote it. Mark nodded. I figured he would leave something behind. He took a step closer. Did he tell you I killed her? She didn't answer. Her silence said enough. Mark's lips trembled into a bitter smile. Of course he did. That's what he's always done, turned everything around. He lies so well, Emily. He makes you doubt what's real until you don't know who to believe. She gripped the banister tightly. Then tell me the truth, Mark, right now. No half stories, no blaming, just the truth. His shoulders slumped. The truth is, I don't know anymore. I loved Sophie, but I never meant to hurt her. I was drunk, angry. We fought, and she fell. Ryan wanted to call for help, but then he saw the blood. He said it was too late, that we'd both go to prison. He told me to disappear. So I did. He looked up at her, his eyes glassy with tears. He built his life out of the pieces of mine. He took everything, Sophie, my future, even my guilt, and turned it into his freedom. Emily felt her chest tighten. Both men's stories intertwined like tangled roots, each contradicting the other, yet both soaked in guilt. Why did you come here? She asked quietly. Mark's voice broke. Because I wanted to see the life he built. The life that should have been mine. And to tell you before he poisons you too. She took a cautious step down. You need to leave, Mark. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Maybe you're right. Maybe the only way to let go of the past is to finally walk away from it. He turned toward the door, but paused. For what it's worth. I never meant for any of this to happen. Not then. Not now. The front door closed softly behind him. Emily stood in the dim light, the letter still clutched in her shaking hand. Rain began again outside, soft, cleansing. For the first time, she realized there might never be a full truth. There were only fragments, two stories twisted together, both broken, both true in their own way. When Ryan returned 2 days later, she didn't yell, didn't cry. She simply placed the letter and the photograph on the table and said, "We're done pretending." He didn't argue. He just looked at her with the weary eyes of a man who had been hiding from himself for too long. Final line. That night, I understood something about secrets. They don't die with the past. They wait, patient and silent, until someone finally listens.